Do you know where your tax money is going and where it is spent? Tonight I'm going to do a brief presentation and a general overview of where tax money is spent, allocated, and the services that it provides. I'm also going to go over another major part of the presentation is to kind of go over comparisons to our city to the surrounding townships. So I think it's pretty well known that if you live within the city, you do pay pretty high taxes. Up on the sheet or the screen there, you can see City of Waupaca is on the left, some bar graphs, and next to it to the right are the various townships that surround us. Now, this is a simplistic breakdown of basically a tax bill. The three bars, blue is tax money that goes to the county, red is tax money that goes to that payer's municipality, and gray is to the schools. So you can see the biggest thing, the biggest void is the allocation to the local municipality. The city residents are paying about $10.10 for every $1,000 of assessment. The townships combined, or on an average, is less than $2. So every $1,000 of improvement, less than $2 is going back to their townships. Conversely, the county and schools are flipped a little bit. City of Waupaca residents are only paying about $6 to the county, where the town's residents are paying upwards of $7 to $750 on a $1,000 improvement to their local or to the county. And the schools are the same, or very similar, I should say. City of Waupaca residents pay about $8.50 for every $1,000. Town people are upwards of $9. So what does this get our city residents? Where does this go? Well, we like to think that it goes to the services, and we provide a lot of them, a lot of high quality services. With the administrative, Henry's department with the budgeting and accounting, paying for the municipal attorney right in front of me here, the licensing, the open meetings, the public records, and of course the taxi service. We have public safety with the police and the fire barn just across the street over there, providing services such as the school liaison, the enforcement, crossing guards, and a number of people, including myself in this room, are part of the emergency management group that helps out for this area. Park and Rec, we have an incredible park system. Athletic fields abound, boat launches with our inland lakes, park maintenance, trail maintenance, playgrounds, public beaches, rec leagues, both youth and adult. We have a skateboard park, a sledding hill, an ice rink, maybe next year, Jensen, but we'll see. And of course, the cemetery. Social services, we have an incredible library. It's almost like we have two libraries, an upstairs and downstairs with our adult and kids. Just a wealth of information over there. Josh with the TV and radio doing an incredible job with that. And of course, the community centers and senior centers. Planning and development with Brennan's department with the inspections and permitting, the grant writing, the planning, the economic developing, the mapping and the zoning, and of course, code enforcement. And, well, last but not least, Public Works, obviously dealing with all of the roadway maintenance, engineering services, snow removal, leaf pickup, sweeping, traffic control, and a whole list of things. The recycling center, which is a combination of the city and the surrounding townships. However, we have basically the most at stake there. It's within our city limits. We put forth a lot of effort with our crews and also our allocation. And if you're within the city, you're going to have utilities, of course, water and sewer, and internet. Josh provides that. And as well, I just threw parking in there. It's more of a permit system, but just threw it up there on the list. Now, this list is pretty big, but I probably left something off, and I could probably go across the room here, and each department head could probably list off probably a half dozen things that I missed and maybe look silly. But we're not going to give Brian that opportunity right now, maybe next time. Now, if you lived out in a township, do you have these same services? Well, you don't. The administrative side, they do have the budgeting, they have the licensing, open meetings, and the public records. Largely that is recommended or required by state statutes. The public safety, they do not have a local police force like we do right here in town. They rely on the county forces. Our city cops can actually go out and help in the townships if needed. Fire protection is out there, however, the response time is greatly increased the further you get away from the center of town. Park and Rec, well, we're pretty fortunate to live next to the chain of lakes. We actually do have a really good parks out there, boat launches, docks just outside of the city, playgrounds and cemeteries. However, so far, a lot of these services don't have to be managed by the townships. I mean, they're up there, some of them are, some of them aren't, some are privately controlled. Social services, well, that's pretty much all controlled by the county. If you live on the township, you're going to the county for those. Planning and development, there is building inspecting and permitting, there's mapping and zoning, but not quite to the degree that we provide here at the city. In public works, well, similarly, they have road maintenance, they have snow removal, but they don't have their own force. They don't have their own crews performing this work. They're hiring out either a private company or a combination of waiting for and working with the county. In utilities, well, you're not having any public utilities. You're going to have private utilities such as internet, gas, that sort of thing. So getting back to city budget, trying to break it down, in a simple way again. The two pie charts, the one on the left represents our budget as a whole, our total expenditures, which is about $7 million. So the big gray one is just like general government, other. Public safety, the police is the gold one, library is the light blue, park and rec is that orange, and then the red, which is public works, which consists about 16% of the total budget. So breaking that down a little bit further, our budget, about 60% of the public works budget goes to wages and benefits. So of course that's their hourly wage that we're paying each worker, their health insurance, life insurance, retirement, uniforms, that sort of thing. The little blue one is what I just labeled as utilities. That's going towards our costs of heat, electricity, and fuel, such as gas and diesel. So we have a lot of costs fueling our equipment. And then the yellow is materials, such as asphalt, gravel, nuts, bolts, contract services, some of which you approved tonight. So what does this get individuals within a road? Well, we're going to compare that to the township's roadways. So out in the town, your typical roadway pavement is 22 feet wide. Now outside of that 22 feet is pretty much a grass shoulder going down to a grass ditch. Pretty narrow. Safety factors, could be present, but there's not a whole lot there to maintain. Within the city here, we got a much wider roadway section. We typically think of it as about 40 feet wide, enough to handle 2 lanes of traffic and also parking on both sides. We usually have curb and gutter, most of the time on both sides, sometimes one, and sometimes we don't have any. And of course, we have sidewalks around, and street lights, and another of other amenities that I'm going to get into right now. So underneath the roadway, so the surface is not the end of the story. Underneath, we have a lot of utilities. We have over 20 miles of storm sewer pipe that keeps our pavements clear and dry. This is a year-round maintenance item for our crews. In the summer, or spring, summer, and fall, it's making sure that these pipes are clear and getting the water off the pavement. In the winter time, we're going around checking to make sure that these drains aren't frozen. We're opening them up. We have the sanitary sewer network. We have over 40 miles of water, or sanitary main, lift stations, 7 lift stations around, and we also treat waste from the Chain of Lakes district. And of course, our water utility collections, or our water distribution system. We have pipes everywhere. We have 7 wells, 3 standpipes, booster station. And what this system is doing is providing people with safe, clean drinking water, and also providing proper flows and pressures to the fire hydrants, to these firefighters, so that when the fires happen, they can take care of their job. Now, one thing I'd like to point out about our network, which a lot of public utilities have, public water utilities have, is with our towers, if the power goes out in the middle of the night, we have about 8 to 12 hours of water supply for the city with a power outage. You don't get that if you're out in the township. The power goes out, your water pump doesn't work. You're out of water. So we have that buffer, that ability to keep safe drinking water to people so they can continue to drink, eat, shower, do all the things that they would regularly do and not even notice that something's wrong here. So I'd like to pull up an example here. You might have noticed that this is Evans Street. It's one of our wider roads. It is on our capital plan, but I'd like to point out that Evans Street runs east-west. It intersects with County Highway E, which is a minor collector road as described by the Wisconsin DOT. This picture was taken about 4 weeks ago when we actually had snow on the ground. We did have snow events that we were battling. The other thing is there's a lot of trees around on the south side of the road, which produce shade on the roadway. Now, you can see the pavement is clear and dry. I mean, that's because of our plowing crews getting out there and working diligently to clear off the 46 miles of roadway that we have each and every snow event. Now, every time it snows, it takes about 2 days, sometimes 3, depending on how much snow, to clear off the roads. We add sand, we add salt to keep it looking like this and provide this for our residents. Now, just south of the city a little bit, this is a town road, very similar, runs east-west, intersects with County Highway E, has a lot of trees around and produces shade. And you can see it's a much different situation. There's ice and snowpack, and the services that are provided by the towns in this situation come from a combination of county sources, county plows, and private companies, hiring out private companies such as Falk's and Paul's. Well, the response time just is not there compared to what we have with our crews working, and it produces a situation like this. So I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about utilities a little bit, since I'm a public works guy. Not driven by taxes, but by funds. So the average user in our city uses 3,000 gallons of water every month. So that equates to about $56 for fees. So that includes a usage charge and a service charge. Service charge is just a flat fee so that we ensure enough money to maintain adequate facilities. On top of that is the fire protection charge, which primarily goes to hydrants. We have hydrants all over the place. We try to follow the DNR regulation or guideline of 300 or a hydrant every 300 feet. We're not perfect, but we're pretty close, and we're working to maintain that. Now, if you lived out in the town, this is what your bill would be to pump water into treated. I mean, much, much less. All you really have is electric bill to pump water from your well, and septic systems are gravity fed. So unless you have a finished basement or groundwater in your basement, would be the only time you'd have a sump pump, which only adds about $1 or $2. Now, we're pretty fortunate in this area to have such good groundwater. I mean, we have very good soils, very shallow depth of water. So our wells in this area are really, really shallow, to be honest with you. So that makes it such a cost-efficient utility for these townspeople. Well, I don't think this is the total cost, so I looked into it a little bit further and kind of thought, well, what if you built a new home? Built one in the city and in the township, and then expected 30 years of living there. So if you built new in the city and put in a lateral, which would cost you about $5,000 for water and sewer, average that out for 30 years, that's going to cost you roughly $170 a year. Service charges we just went over, so yearly you're looking over $600. So our total cost per year is about $800 for clean water and take care of your waste. Now in the towns, to drill a well and put in a septic is going to cost you about $15,000. And like I said, our aquifer here is pretty generous, so it's a pretty cheap way to go, even though it's $15,000. But over the course of 30 years, you're only going to average about $400 a year. Services, well, you only need to pump your septic tank once every 3 years. It's about $150. You don't have to test your well unless you first install it or when you exchange properties. Is the only time you need to test your well. And then the pumping I went over with, so for a total cost of about $500 a year being on private well and septic. So there's this $300 void here. Is it worth it? I mean, our city residents, what do we give them, or should they be clamoring? Well, our utilities, our water utility pumps about 1.5 million gallons of water every day. We treat that water with chlorine to keep the bacteria away. We also add fluoride to improve the dental health. And that's enough water to fill the Augie Austin gym. Every single day, we're pumping that water out of the ground. Every year we're testing this water 200 times. We're testing it 200 times and for 50 different parameters. We're testing it for carcinogens, pathogens, nutrients, toxins, heavy metals, aesthetics such as hardness and cloudiness. And that's what we do. That's what we provide. Now, on the downstream side of things, our treatment plant does about the same thing. It treats 1 million gallons of water every day. So think of that treatment plant effluent filling the gym. Not as dirty as you think. A lot of the times when we discharge our effluent into the Waupaca River, it's actually cleaner than the river itself. And that's because of the DNR permit that we have to work underneath. Our plant uses a lot of different ways to treat the water. Just to sum it up, it's primary treatment, secondary treatment, tertiary treatment, which is basically a physical treatment, a biological treatment, and a chemical treatment. Doing all those things to stay within our DNR permit and discharging out to the environment in a clean, safe way. Now, if you live out in a town, like I mentioned before, you really don't test your water. Well, you can, that's up to you, but you're not regulated by the CDC or the DNR, so the only time that it's required is if you install a new well or if you exchange hands. Your septic tank is the same way. You pump it out every 3 years. And a septic tank uses just a primary treatment system, which basically is not usually considered to be adequate anymore. So you have a large tank, it takes all the volume, the heavies settle to the bottom, the light stuff such as fats and grease and plastics float to the top, and everything kind of in the middle floats out in your drain field and down into the aquifer. And typically what happens, especially in our area with our shallow groundwater, is that this improperly treated water gets back into the wells. Sometimes the same property, sometimes your neighbors. So it can be a bad situation. So there's definitely more cost of living within the city. But these costs are put to services that cannot be matched by the outside townships. The department heads and myself work hard every day to be efficient, to use the budgets that we have, be creative, plan wisely, and to produce a safe and vibrant community. Any questions?
Justin, I'd like to have a copy of these slides, if you could provide that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Is this something we're gonna try and toss on our website too, just for, if you want. FYI? I mean, is that okay? I mean,
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Henry, you had.
Well, I liked your comparison on the utilities, but one thing I don't think it's apples and oranges because it's tied to the water system is fire protection. Because we have hydrants in the city, I do believe generally all our residents are paying less than they would if on fire and hazard insurance if they versus living outside the city. And it's all based on the value of the home and you know contents, so it's hard to make a comparison. But that very likely levels out the cost of the utilities between the city, maybe.
Yes, well that could be, and I didn't look into homeowners insurance, which would be reflective in fire response times. So the further you're out, away from a fire district, the higher your homeowners insurance. So, I mean that could be, like you said, try to equate it. So that 740 to the fire charge is probably the difference, if not less, in the city paying for that increase in insurance. But I didn't get into that one.
Yeah, I think they actually, don't they compute it right from the fire barn, Chuck? I think fire insurance. Yeah.
You just went through the rating. I don't know what it is right now. It's being reviewed.
Yeah, and I think every resident is within 300 feet of a hydrant in the city, probably.
20 feet for me.
Well, it's pretty close. It depends on
Right.
a lot of things, but.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Justin or comments? We didn't do when Justin talked about doing this, and I know he talked to Henry, but he also talked to me about this too. I thought it was a great idea, and we didn't do this to compete against the townships, but we hear so much about city taxes being so much higher than if you live in the townships. And I think it's really important to know, I mean, we all know why we live in the city, but this is helping us to understand a little bit better on why we live here. And there are many reasons that we do, and we take for granted, quite honestly, too. You know, I mean, even if we look at our ambulance service that we have too, you know, the response time for the ambulance is a lot quicker when you're within the city than you are out in the townships too. And we pay the same dollar amount, you know, percentage-wise that they do out in the townships. And so, I mean, those are just a couple of, you know, just other things too that we know of too. And, you know, the other thing, Justin, that you did touch on this too, but the chain also has their own wastewater treatment pipes, but they do bring it into the city and so on. So they're paying a cost, I'm assuming that's very similar to what the city taxpayers are paying too. So the people that are on the chain sanitary, their costs are probably even higher for their utilities.
Yes,
But-
it is.
But the waste is not, sorry, but the waste is not ending up in our lakes or our rivers or in our aquifer. So,
Yeah, I guess kind of the whole thought of this presentation was to actually give you guys something to use. You know, when you talk to your constituents or if they're complaining about taxes and services and all that, well, at least you have something now you can refer to to hopefully help you guys, because every time I get a complaint or a comment, almost every time it's, well, do you know how much I pay back here? So it's a little frustrating to hear, so I can only imagine what you guys go through.
excellent. All right. Thank you very much, Justin. Appreciate it. Actually, I like that I wanted to bring up one other thing too. I do like that you included all of the departments in there too. I didn't realize that at first that's what you were going to do. I thought you were just gonna pat the Public Works on the back. So I think that was great that you're able to include them in there too.
Well, a little nod, but also maybe a challenge for them to do the same.
Yeah, right? Whoa, okay. All right, somebody want to hit the lights for us here?